You are listening to Meet the Thriller Author, the podcast where I interview writers of mysteries, thrillers, and suspense books. I am your host, Alan Peterson, and this is episode number 132. In this episode of the podcast, I was honored to have Walter Mosley as my guest. He is one of the most versatile and admired writers in America. He's the author of more than 60 critically acclaimed books. He's most well known for his crime fiction, including the iconic Easy Rawlins mysteries. In 2013, Mosley was inducted into New York State's Writers Hall of Fame, and he's a winner of numerous awards, including the Unknow Henry Award, the Mystery Writers of America's Grand Master Award, a Grammy, several NAACP Image Awards, and PEN America's Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2020, he was named the recipient of the Robert Kirsch Award for Lifetime Achievement from the Los Angeles Times Festivals of Books. He was born and raised in LA and now lives in Brooklyn and in Los Angeles. His latest novel is Blood Grove, which is the 15th novel in the Easy Rawlins mysteries, and I received an advance copy and enjoyed it thoroughly. It's out today, February 2nd, so go get yourself a copy of Blood Grove. It was a real honor to talk to Walter Mosley about his legendary career, about his writing process, about the diversity in literature, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned for that interview coming here in just a second. Before I get to the interview, I'd like to tell you about Walter Mosley's Masterclass. I've been a big fan of the classes available over at Masterclass. So far, I've taken the James Patterson, Dan Brown, David Baldacci. Those are the writing ones. And now Walter Mosley has his masterclass, and I took that last week, and it was amazing. Such great advice to be able to learn writing from somebody like Walter Mosley. And in the podcast, there's a very interesting behind-the-scenes story of how that masterclass came together, so make sure you listen to that. But I do highly recommend you go check that out, thrillingreads.com/Mosley class, all one word, and you'll be able to access that masterclass and many others. And of course, that is an affiliate link and is a great way to support this podcast. So that's thrillingreads.com/Mosley class. All right, let's get on to the interview with Walter Mosley. So excited to have Mr. Mosley on the podcast. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
I received an advance copy of Blood Grove and enjoying it very much. And I was kind of taken in the beginning of the book. It wasn't so much about solving the murder, but even for Easy Rawlins to try to figure out if there was a murder because the body disappeared. So I kind of wondered if that was an idea that you'd been mulling around in your head for a while before you started to write the Blood Grove.
No. I just, when I don't know, sometimes I know exactly what I'm going to write, it just makes sense. But most often I don't. Easy's there and he's in this place. He's going through his own experiences, which, are going to somehow reverberate with the case that he's gone. But I don't know what that's going to be. And then, so a guy comes in, he says, I don't know. I think I might have killed somebody. I don't know. And, and he's saying, well, if you don't know, then maybe we should just let it go. The only thing we can find out is that you're in trouble. Right now, you're not in trouble. And, it's a white guy, but the white guy's a veteran and Easy's a veteran. And Easy identifies with him much in the way that, people identify racially. They've had that experience, the experience of war. And so we follow it. And, is the guy dead? Isn't he dead? Well, the question is, did this guy kill him? And after a while, it's not even that. After a while, that guy doesn't matter anymore. The guy who's hired him. And it's just Easy's gotten too far into a case that he shouldn't be into. So he has to deal with it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that part, the bond between Easy and the Craig Killian character. Like Easy was a vet of World War II. Craig is a Vietnam vet. This is set in 1969. And they're like dealing with the PTSD, but I don't even know if it was addressed as PTSD back in those days.
No, it was not. They call it shell shock, battle fatigue. It had different names then, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. Did you, when you started to write this, did you look into that? Did you talk to people who are combat vets with PTSD? I kind of wonder what your.
Oh no, I didn't do that. Yeah. I mean, I've read stuff, I know stuff, but. That idea, there's some writers, who I love, like Elmore Leonard. Elmore, he researched everything, and I love his books, but but no, I just figure I can follow. There's so much, I mean, dealing with this stuff starts with Freud, and veterans of World War One, who have all these, hysterical and neurotic responses, which are, purely emotional and not at all physical, though it has physical manifestations. I just work, so, I mean, I do know stuff. I just didn't go interview people.
Yeah,
I guess I've talked to vets before. I don't consider that interviewing though,
Yeah, I really like that from your writing styles, and when you talk about writing fiction, that because like you said, you read about some other authors who are like they're flying jets and all this research. And I'm like, wow. So it kind of like puts it out of like, maybe I can't do that, So
like, research is so interesting, because then all this stuff which has nothing to do with the story. And, I think Michener was one who like got me the most with that. He knew so much stuff and he wrote it all down, and I was completely not interested. I mean, I might've been interested if I was reading something else. Now, of course, a long time ago, when you have somebody like Herman Melville, who, I mean, he wasn't doing research. He was actually, on a whaling ship. But that was a time when you didn't have the internet, when you didn't have television, when you didn't have radio. Most people didn't get daily newspapers. That if you want to explain to people how the world worked, this is another thing. Today, it's mostly about psychology and people's emotions. And it's so much of modern day fiction is about character. And so, I'm worried about my characters, and they're all different. I mean, even if two people have PTSD, it's not the same thing. It's not like, you have COVID-19. And even COVID-19, it's not the same thing. I mean, everybody's different. So, well, how did you respond? So I couldn't breathe. Well, how did you respond? Well, I couldn't taste anything. I mean,
Yeah. There's people who don't even know they have it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. How did you respond? I don't know. I didn't know I had it until 3 months later.
Yeah. And I think about reading the Blood Grove is Easy's navigating through the racial tensions of the 60s, the Watt riots and all that. And then everything that happened in the summer here, last summer in the States with George Floyd. Were you done writing this book when all that happened? I was wondering what your take is on all that, because it was like,
I had already been finished with this book. I mean, a lot of the things that that happen, the people that are new for people, these things aren't new for most Black people in America. Most people who who live close to the streets of America, it's terrible, the things that happen, but they're not surprising. Easy, in one part of this book, I mean, he gets stopped by the police. He's going this way, they stop him. He's going that way, and they stop him. He goes the other way, because he's driving a Rolls Royce, because a guy couldn't pay him, so he gave him this Rolls Royce. And then finally, Easy says, I got to give this car away. I can't drive it because I can't be a detective in a Rolls Royce, which is kind of wonderful, I think. I'm just, racism wasn't invented along with the cell phone, but the cell phone exposes racism in such, interesting, ways. You can actually watch something happen because anybody can take a film of it, which is, I mean, it's a wonderful thing, and it's also a terrible thing because you're watching, people getting, destroyed all over the place. But no, I didn't, I didn't really need to do research on that.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point too, because it's always been there, but now because of social media and everyone's got a camera in their pocket, it's just now everyone's seeing what's been going on all these years that might have not known. And
and a lot of people, you talk to them and say, well, God, it's happening so much nowadays. And I'm always saying, no, it's happened every day for the last 4 centuries, every single day. And, and really, even when you say that to people, it's hard for them to believe. Mm-hmm. They say, well, then why didn't I know? I said, because there were no cell phones. And it's hard. People say, come on, it's not just that. I mean, people could talk about it. I say, yeah, people talked about it and you didn't believe it. That becomes, the thing, so me writing about Easy all through, through the really until it starts in the 30s. into the 40s, and all the way up to now to the 60s, and now I'm going to be in the 70s. It's an important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm seeing that now too with there's a lot of talk about from agents and about writing with more diverse characters, and you have that own voices hashtag and all that stuff, and you've been writing diverse characters for 30 years. Did you get a lot of pushback when you tried to publish that first book, or?
Well, no, I didn't get pushback on doing the first mystery, because mystery is a certain kind of form that everybody reads, and so so there's a lot of open. Though I find a lot of people. Years ago, I was talking to Jonathan Demme. He wanted to do a movie about the Leonid McGill series, and he says, I'd like to do easy. He says, but you concentrate too much on the racial conflict in there, and I can see, because for him, it's overdoing it. It's like, the other day I'm writing a TV show right now, and there's a lovely young Black woman in the hood in a big city, and she's walking down streets. Now, she's a lovely young Black woman. Men are stopping her every block, every 2 blocks. They're talking to her. And one guy came to me and said, you're doing too much of that. And yeah, I said, that's right. It happens too much, but it does happen too much. The thing is that, are you going to say what it's like? Or are you going to say, well, one guy did it and another guy did it and she didn't like it, So no, it's different. One guy did it, another guy did it, third guy did it, she stabbed him. It's like, that's where we want to go.
Yeah, it's part of the storytelling process, right? Like you always say, like write what's really happening, what's really going on in that world. Those
things that are important, the things that are really happening, they're important. I'm not going to sit and talk about how many people are talking on cell phones, because that's not important. But of course, that's another thing that's happening all over the place,
Yeah, you mentioned that with the Easy Rawlins series that it's now spanning like 20, 30 years. How do you keep track of all that? Do you have like a big serious Bible document or?
No, I know more or less, what I've done and where I'm going. It's not too repetitive. I'm not making too many mistakes, but it's true about everything. You can't be perfect. The idea of kind of worrying about perfection in film, in writing, in painting and any kind of art, the thing is saying, look, I'm creating an image that you're seeing and imagining. The fact that there might be a mistake here or there, that's being human, and being human is what we are.
You're such an influential writer. Which writers influenced you when you were? Because you didn't get started till you were in your 30s, right? I mean,
it's true. I didn't start writing. It's interesting. It's a complex question to answer. Who are the biggest influences on me? Well. One of them, of course, is Jack Kirby in Marvel Comics. Mm-hmm. I'm reading comic books, and comic books are telling me stories that excite me, that make me excited. And then, of course, I read a lot of novels. Treasure Island when I was maybe in my teens, and then Winnie the Pooh when I was even younger. Books, Tom Swift, all of these kind of books the kids read that they're so excited about. I mean, a child reading is actually the deepest reader because they pay attention to everything and they actually create that world. It's less, I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I love Langston Hughes. I love Mark Twain. I mean, there's a lot of people that I've read that I like, but even more than all of those people, even more than Marvel Comics, is my father, who's a great storyteller. And as a storyteller, he would tell a story about something and people would laugh. Your family would get together and one guy's telling a story and it's just so amazing. People are laughing and laughing and you're going, well, this is the, what I want to do. I want to tell stories, but it's not so much about literature. One of the big problems I think that people were having, I don't know if they're having it now, but it certainly was 20 years ago and a little bit before, writers writing about writers writing. I'm saying I'm not interested in writers writing. I'm interested in the world that I live in. I'm interested in, in Los Angeles. I'm interested in America. I'm interested in men and women. I'm interested in the conflict and the even the dialectic between peoples and nations. And so those are the stories that I want to tell, and that's the world that I want to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's also. I read a quote of yours saying that that sometimes it's good to start later in life because you have more life experience. So, like for somebody who's 50 years old and think, oh, it's too late now. I mean, it really is never too late to start writing.
Yeah, right. It's a bad time to start trying to be a gymnast if you're in your 50s. But writing, and much of art, painting, sculpture is pretty physical, but even sculpture, the more the more sophisticated you are in understanding it. If you're 18 and you've been having sex for 2 years and you want to write about sex, you probably don't know that much about it, and the things that you really know, you're probably not going to write about. And you may not even know what you really know. But as you get older, as you have more experience, as that experience deepens, and some people, listen, a good friend of mine is the Haitian writer Edwige Nantika. Edwige is, she lived through, she was in Port-au-Prince, in the worst part of Port-au-Prince, as a child, and her experience was vast. But most young people in America, they go into school, they come home, they go to school, they come home, they get high, they have a little sex, they do this and that, but there's nothing really on the line. And you have to really have something on the line to actually have something to say.
I really enjoyed you have a book on about the writing process, the elements of fiction, and I've been taking your masterclass over there, your teachings on that masterclass site.
Yeah.
And I've really been enjoying that. What attracts you to teach about the writing or try to help others about writing?
Well, I think the two books, this year you write your novel and Elements of Fiction. I often, will be someplace I'll be giving a reading, and somebody will ask a question. It sounds one way, but really what they're asking is, how do you write a novel? And I think, wow, if I only had like 40 minutes just to talk, I could explain it. But you never have 40 minutes to have that kind of talk. And people get they say, come on, let's go, hurry up. We got to get our books on. We need to go home. And so that's when I wrote the first one. This year, you write your novel. And this year, Write Your Novel is a book for anybody. Anybody who wants to write a novel this year can read that book, and it will tell them how. Now, they'll decide whether or not they're going to do it. Elements of Fiction goes deeper. It's a deeper dive into what writing fiction is about and what character development is about, and what theme and uses of poetry, all that stuff. And masterclass, they invited me to do it. They're really nice. It's a really nice thing. They pay you. It's a good thing, so, and I've already done it. So I said, well, I'll come do it here. And, people can listen. I know a lot of people aren't so much, don't really learn that much from reading, and they learn more from seeing something and hearing about it.
Yeah, they seem to have it down to pretty good science. Do you kind of curious about the whole production process of the masterclass? Did they do it in LA and you go?
Oh my God, it was so interesting. It's the middle of COVID, right?
Yeah.
And there's hardly any place where they could get a crew, because they do a real, they got a crew of like 80 people, and they shoot this, they shoot this film, So they said, well, the only place really that we can do this with, no trouble is Iceland. And I said, I live in New York, but I'm in LA right now. I got, stuck in LA with COVID, with COVID happening. And so I said, oh, don't worry, we'll fly you to Iceland. They did. I was on this plane. They flew me to Iceland. I spent like a week doing this thing, and it was really wild. And then I came home.
Oh wow, that is crazy. Dude. I would have never known you were in Iceland. It looks like you were like in a studio, like you're like a library.
Yeah, right. No, it looks like something else, but I was in Iceland doing this thing. It was very cool. I really enjoyed it. And I'd never been to, Reykjavik. So it was wild, just to see it.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And then I read one of your reviews for Blood Grove from Kirkus, and
Yeah.
they mentioned that you actually had thought of killing Easy Rawlins off. Is that really true?
Yeah.
And
Blonde Faith. At the end of Blonde Faith, he's had a drank for the first time. He's driving barefoot up Highway 1, on the ocean, and there's a car in front of me. So says I'm going to pass that car, but he passed the car, and all of a sudden a truck is coming. And really, I was just writing. I didn't know where I was going, and then the truck is coming, so he goes to the left even more, and there's a dirt kind of a shoulder. And then all of a sudden that gives out and he just goes off a cliff. And I went, and I stopped writing. I went, wow, I guess he's dead. That's what I thought, and I said, well, okay. I wrote it. And I had been thinking, my books had not, I like my books, but they weren't new. They weren't new stories. And I said, all right, Easy Rawlins is dead. I'll move on. And so I had done that. But then 4 or 5 years later, I realized it was because I had passed the time of my father, the stories, telling my father's story and his, his people, his family. And so then now I had to tell my own stories. And when I realized that, I started writing the new one, Little Green, and then Charcoal Joe, and, like that. And so I was, happy again.
Yeah, you created such iconic characters. What's your process for that, for like an aspiring writer that's listening to this and creating a character like Easy Rawlins? Or
that is like a really hard question to answer. Of all questions, and it sounds like it should be simple. I'm just writing about people, and I come from a place and a culture where a lot of people have nicknames. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are like anything like in crime, like everybody in the mafia, the Cosa Nostra, and all different. They have names like Abe Rollis, who was one of the major guys in Murder Incorporated. They didn't call him Abe; they called him Kid Twist, because he used to choke people. You know what I mean? And it's like, whoa, right? And that's just the way I think. As you don't call him, oh, John. There's enough Johns. Okay, I do have a John the bartender, but he owns that name so perfectly that even there it's special. It's not John; it's John the bartender. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What about your writing process? Because I know I get asked this all the time, but I really love that the big thing that you tell people is write every day. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, listen, I look at writing the way that psychoanalysis worked when it worked. Psychoanalysis isn't really a viable a therapeutic system today. But back in Freud's time, when people were having these hysterical responses to things, sexual events in their lives or the war, World War I, what he would do is every day you would come in, you lie down on a couch, and you would free associate. Therapists would say a thing or two, but not too much. Then you go home. And while you're sleeping, all the things that you were talking about connect to things to your unconscious. And when you wake up the next day, there are new things and you come into therapy. And to a great degree, that form of therapy, you were actually healing yourself. By talking. Every once in a while, a therapist might say, well, oh, you said this, oh, you said that, but not so much. I think the same thing is true with most art. If you're writing a story, if you're telling a story about Easy Rawlins, or you're telling stories about Socrates Fortlow or King Oliver, one of the people I'm writing about, while you're writing, all of these new ideas are happening in your head. You're not thinking about them. You're just thinking about what you're trying to write. Then you put that away. You go home. You go to sleep. The whole day, that night, the next morning, finally you get back to the page again, and there are all these new ideas in your head. They came from what you were thinking yesterday. Every day you do that, you get deeper into who you are and what kind of story you're telling. Every day, every day, every day, every day. When you stop writing a day, things start to float away. 2 days, they're even farther. 3 days, you got to start from the beginning again. If you're writing a novel, you put off 3 days, you might as well just start from the first page and read it and say, what did I do? And so that's why I think that, right. And, there are a few people, I know Seminole didn't work like that, but so many people, I find it's so useful for them to keep on doing it. It's better to write 20 minutes every day than 8 hours a day on the weekend. You know what I mean? That because you're slowly building up the fiction in your mind.
Yeah, and it really catches up to you too when you stop writing. All of a sudden, you dig yourself in this hole, and it's been a month, and you haven't written anything.
Yeah, and you're lost because because it's not in your head. When you write every day, it's inside you, and when it's inside you, you know how to. You say, okay, Easy is like this, Mouse is like that. These people are doing this, and one day you wake up and say, oh wow, I've been making a mistake for the last however long. I got to do it another way. Anything that you do, I think, is worth doing all the time. And listen, you talk about boxers. A boxer, hasn't fought for a year. They get in the ring, and the first thing that the announcer starts talking about is, oh, looks like he got some ring rust. Uh-oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, you get ring rust because you get further away, from the important element of your life.
I always wondered too, do you ever get false starts when you're writing something, or do you usually see it through?
Well, writing is rewriting. So the whole first draft of a novel is a false start, and then you go through it, and then you go through it, and then you go through it, but it's important to have that false start,
Yeah. So, and what is your writing process? So you start writing, do you you just use a Word document and you start writing on that, or Microsoft Word?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and for me, I'm an older dude, I'm like 69, but back in the 70s, early 70s, I became a computer programmer. So I've been working, writing electronically most of my adult life. And so, I pull out the computer. That's what I write on naturally.
All right. So what's next for you and for Easy Rawlins? Is there? I heard you say that it's going into the 70s now. So there's more Easy Rawlins coming.
There will be, and it will be in the 70s. However, right now, the next book I'm going to write is the character that I started with in Down the River Onto the Sea, King Oliver. He's going to have a new case in New York. And then, maybe I'm going to write about Socrates, which is not, classically in the crime genre. And then, after that, Easy again, or maybe Leonid McGill. We'll see, and of course, then maybe a novel might, pop up, somewhere in there.
All right. Well, looking forward to it. And your book is out now, out February 2nd, but by the time they listen to this podcast, it'll be out. So go check it out.
Thank you so much. It's great.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you.
You too.
Make sure to check out thrillingreads.com/Mosley class to check out his masterclass. In his masterclass, Walter Mosley teaches you how to rethink genres and the rules of fiction and how to approach writing your own novel. The masterclass is broken into 13 sections, including Walter Mosley's writing process, developing fictional characters, story versus plot, surviving the publishing industry, and a lot more. To learn more, go to thrillingreads.com/Mosley class. That's all one word, Mosley class. And just a full disclosure, I am a member of Masterclass's affiliate program, so I do receive a commission if you order from that link. It's a great way to not only access the wonderful masterclass from Walter Mosley, but it helps support the podcast. So I do appreciate that. And to access the show notes for this episode and to have access to more interviews, go to thrillerauthors.com. All right, thank you for listening to this episode, and until next time.